It's Flashcards Friday here at Math, Science, History. And today, I'm just going to give you 3 quick, honest reminders that the way you already think, the instincts you already have, the questions you already ask, these are not random. They are not accidental. They are the same moves that the greatest scientific and mathematical minds in history made famous. But first, a quick word from my advertisers. You don't need a lab. You don't need a degree. You just need to recognize what's already happening in your own head. This week's 3 cards come straight out of our Pride Month special. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, I released it last Wednesday. But even if you haven't listened to it, these cards will stand on their own. My first card is the Bacon card, as in Sir Francis Bacon, who was born in 1561 and is the person most responsible for the way science actually works today. Before Bacon, the dominant approach to understanding the world was inherited from ancient Greek philosophy, specifically Aristotle. The idea was that you could reason your way to truth through logic and argument alone. You didn't necessarily need to go out and test anything. You just needed to think hard enough, construct a sufficiently airtight argument, and the truth would follow. Bacon looked at that approach and said, that's not good enough. He argued that the only way to truly understand the natural world was to observe it, test it, gather evidence, and build your conclusions from the ground up, from specific observations to general principles, not the other way around. He called this inductive reasoning, and it became the foundation of what we now call the scientific method. Every experiment ever run, every hypothesis ever tested, every peer-reviewed paper ever published, all of it traces back to the framework that Bacon built. He also did this at enormous personal risk because history notes that he enjoyed the company of men. However, being openly different in any way in Elizabethan England carried serious consequences, as he witnessed when his brother-in-law was executed for being gay. So, here's your flashcard. Think about a time this week or any week when someone told you something and your instinct was, but how do we actually know that's true? Where's the evidence? Has anyone actually tested this? That instinct, that refusal to accept a claim just because someone stated it confidently is not stubbornness, nor is it contrarianism. And it's not you being difficult. That is the scientific method. Sir Francis Bacon built the foundation of modern science on exactly that instinct. You already think like a scientist. My second card is the Mead card, and I do mention her in my last Wednesday's podcast. Margaret Mead was born in 1901 and was an anthropologist, the author of more than 20 books, the president of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and one of the most consequential social scientists America has ever produced. I love this lady. Mead spent her career traveling to places far outside her own culture and asking a deceptively simple question. Is the way we do things the only way to do things? Or did we just decide at some point that this was normal and forget that we decided? Her most famous book, Coming of Age in Samoa, published in 1928, challenged the widespread assumption that the turmoil of adolescence was a biological inevitability, something hardwired into being a teenager. Mead went to Samoa, observed a different culture, and came back with evidence that adolescence looked completely different there. And she showed that the struggle and drama so many Western families take for granted is cultural, not biological, and not inevitable. She showed that drama and struggle is chosen, in a sense, without us knowing it was a choice. That finding caused an uproar, it still does, in some quarters, because it's uncomfortable to be told that what you assume is natural is actually constructed. Mead also loved to cross gender lines throughout her life, in an era when that carried real professional and social risk. She lived her own version of questioning what was supposed to be natural and inevitable. So, here's your second flashcard. Think about a time when you looked at the way something was being done at work, in your family, in your community, and thought, but why do we have to do it this way? Did anyone ever actually decide this was the best way, or did it just become this way? That question is not naivety. It is not ignorance, and it is not you failing to understand how things work. That's anthropological thinking. Margaret Mead changed how humanity understands itself by asking exactly that question. So when you ask, why do we do it this way? You already think like a scientist. Finally, my third card is the Erdős card, Paul Erdős, who was born 1913 and died in 1996 and was one of the most prolific mathematicians in history. He published over 1,500 papers, collaborated with more than 500 colleagues, owned nothing but a suitcase filled with math papers and theories, and described himself as being in love with mathematics. I get this guy. If you listened to Momentum Monday this week, you already know a lot about Paul Erdős. But here's the piece of his story I want to focus on today. Erdős kept a list of problems he couldn't solve. Not problems he hadn't gotten to yet. Problems he had genuinely tried to crack and couldn't. He kept them alive, written down and named. He extensively thought about them and returned to them for years and sometimes decades. He offered cash prizes for solutions because he was more interested in the problem getting solved than being the one to solve it. So in a sense, he stayed in a relationship with his unsolved mathematical problems the way some people stay in a relationship with old friends, checking in and never quite letting them go. And here's what made that possible. Erdős never treated a problem he couldn't solve as evidence of failure. He treated it as evidence that the problem was interesting. The harder the problem, the more he loved it. So for the third flashcard, think about a problem in your life, at work, at home, in yourself, that you keep coming back to. One that hasn't been resolved yet. One that's been with you for a while. One that, if you're honest, you haven't given up on even though you've hit walls. The fact that you keep returning to it is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is not evidence that you're stuck or failing or spinning your wheels. That is a mathematician's relationship with a problem. Paul Erdős called it falling in love. The problems worth solving are the ones that won't let you go. You already think like a mathematician. So there we have 3 flashcards about 3 scientists and 3 things that you already do. So for flashcard number 1, remember that when you question claims and when you demand evidence, you are being just like Sir Francis Bacon. For flashcard number 2, remember that when you ask whether the way things are the only way they could be, remember you are thinking like Margaret Mead. And finally, for flashcard number 3, when you stay in a relationship with the hard problems and refuse to abandon them, those are my favorite kind of people. Remember, you are thinking like Paul Erdős. None of these are skills you need to learn. They are instincts you already have. What changes is that you can now recognize them for what they are. Not quirks, not flaws, not you being difficult or idealistic or obsessive. It's you being a scientific and mathematical thinker. So, as you go into the weekend, remind yourself of that. Remember that you are smarter than you think you give yourself credit for. You think like a scientist and you think like a mathematician, and you are basically a badass. Scientific thinking and mathematical thinking are yours already. Have a great weekend, rest well, and if one of your Erdős problems comes to you in the shower on Saturday morning, that's your brain doing its job. And until next time, carpe diem.